you will understand the hidden pressures forcing top AI researchers to abandon their careers and what this means for the future of artificial intelligence. A researcher sits alone in a university lab at 3 a.m., staring at a training run that won't finish for another 6 days. The GPU cluster, already 3 generations behind what Google has, just crashed. Again, she's been awake for 19 hours. Her paper deadline is in 48. The acceptance rate this year? 21%. And even if she gets in, the salary offer waiting from OpenAI is 7 times what her postdoc pays. This isn't a story about one person burning out. This is a story about a global exodus that's quietly reshaping the future of artificial intelligence. Top researchers, the people who actually built the systems we're now betting everything on, are walking away from labs, abandoning tenure tracks, and in some cases leaving the field entirely. The question everyone's avoiding is simple. Why are the people who understand AI best the ones running from it the fastest? What you're about to see isn't speculation. It's a crisis playing out in real time across Stanford, MIT, DeepMind, and every major AI lab in the world. Over the next 15 minutes, we're going to show you the hidden pressures forcing brilliant researchers to abandon careers they spent decades building. You'll see the salary gaps that universities can't close, the compute inequality that makes academic research nearly impossible, the peer review collapse that's turning conferences into submission lotteries, and the ethical breaking points that drove some of the field's brightest minds to walk away publicly. By the end, you'll understand why this exodus isn't just about individual burnout. It's about who controls the future of AI and what we're losing in the process. Let's start with the data that nobody talks about. According to Stanford's latest AI Index report, we're seeing significant shifts in how AI researchers view their careers. The report tracks global AI talent trends and employment patterns, and the numbers reveal a system under extraordinary strain. Here's what's actually happening. US institutions now employ 59% of elite AI researchers, up from 51% in 2017. That sounds like a win, until you realize where those researchers are actually going. When we look at the global AI talent tracker, we can see researchers moving between institutions and countries. The question is, why? Of the 4,622 researchers who published at NeurIPS 2024, 38% received their undergraduate education in China. But only 11% of top China-educated AI researchers remain working in China, down from 16% in 2019. This isn't just international brain drain. This is a wholesale restructuring of where AI research happens and who pays for it. The conference numbers tell the rest of the story. NeurIPS, the biggest AI research conference in the world, saw submission rates explode over the last 4 years. But acceptance rates, they've collapsed. We're talking 21%, 22%, sometimes lower. Thousands of researchers spending months on papers that statistically won't make it through peer review. And here's the kicker, the reviewers are the same overworked researchers trying to publish their own work. The system is eating itself. Even the US Bureau of Labor Statistics has begun tracking AI's impact on employment. AI impacts on BLS employment projections reveal workforce transition patterns, but those projections can't account for what happens when the people building AI start leaving faster than new researchers enter the field. Now let's talk about compute access. If you're at OpenAI, Google DeepMind, or Anthropic, you have access to clusters worth tens of millions of dollars. You can run experiments that take weeks. You can train models with billions of parameters. If you're at a university, you're fighting for access to a shared cluster that crashes when too many grad students run jobs at the same time. Your experiments take months instead of days. Your ideas, no matter how good, die because you can't afford to test them. This isn't a small gap. It's a chasm, and every researcher working in academia knows it. Major tech companies are asking hard questions. Microsoft's Work Lab recently published findings on whether AI is actually fixing work or making it worse. Microsoft's Work Trend Index examines the question, will AI fix work? The irony is almost too perfect. Because while AI companies promise to automate away tedious labor and free humans for creative work, the people building those systems are drowning in exactly the kind of burnout AI was supposed to solve. Academic researchers at NBR have been studying generative AI's real impact on workers. Their findings suggest the picture is more complicated than Silicon Valley's narrative. The NBR working paper examines generative AI at work and its impacts on the workforce, and the results don't match the LinkedIn hype. Here's what researchers are actually experiencing. Endless grant applications with declining success rates, peer review loads that take 40+ hours per conference cycle, pressure to publish constantly or lose funding, and the creeping realization that even if you do everything right, A 28-year-old at Anthropic with no PhD is solving the same problems faster because they have 100x the compute budget. The salary gap makes it worse. We're not talking about a 20% difference. We're talking about fresh PhD graduates walking into $400,000 total compensation packages at OpenAI, while tenure-track professors at top universities start at $120,000. You can love research, you can care about open science and knowledge sharing, but when you're $200,000 in student debt and you're watching your former classmates buy houses in the Bay Area while you're sharing an apartment at 34, the math stops making sense. But money and compute aren't the whole story. There's something darker happening here. Let's talk about the researchers who didn't leave quietly. In December 2020, Timnit Gebru, one of the most respected voices in AI ethics, was forced out of Google. Her crime? Co-authoring a paper that raised concerns about the risks of large language models. The same models Google was betting billions on. 6 months later, Margaret Mitchell, another AI ethics researcher at Google, was also fired. The message was clear. If your research threatens the product roadmap, your research is a problem. These weren't isolated incidents. These were public breaking points that revealed what many researchers already knew. There are things you're not allowed to study if you want to keep your job. Ironically, while AI is supposed to reduce burnout, many AI researchers themselves report intense pressure and imbalance. Upwork's research explores this contradiction. Their report examines from burnout to balance AI-enhanced work models, but the people building the AI models aren't experiencing any balance at all. Here's what doesn't get covered in the press releases. Researchers working 70-hour weeks to hit paper deadlines. Labs where grad students are openly told their job is to feed the model, not to ask questions about whether the model should exist. Entire research directions abandoned because they don't lead to venture-backable products. The reproducibility crisis makes it worse. Papers get published with results that nobody can replicate because the original team had access to proprietary datasets or compute infrastructure that doesn't exist anywhere else. Science is supposed to be verifiable. But when the only labs that can verify your results are the same 5 companies hiring researchers away from universities, what are we actually doing here? And then there's the AGI tension. If you work at an AI lab in 2025, you're surrounded by people who genuinely believe we're 3-5 years from artificial general intelligence. Maybe they're right, maybe they're not. But either way, if you're a researcher who thinks we should slow down and study alignment, safety, robustness, interpretability, you're the person asking everyone to stop printing money. You're the institutional pessimist, the one holding back progress. So you leave, or you stop asking questions, or you quietly switch to capabilities research because that's where the funding is. Here's a story that didn't make headlines. A junior researcher at a top AI lab spent 8 months building a tool to detect when language models were making up citations, hallucinating references that didn't exist. Useful work, important work. The tool worked. But when she presented it internally, the response wasn't celebration. It was, "This makes the model look bad. Can you focus on something else?" That story isn't unique. It's the pattern. Researchers are being asked to choose between scientific integrity and career survival. And many of them are choosing door number 3, leave entirely. The peer review system is collapsing under the weight. Conferences like NeurIPS now receive 10,000 plus submissions. Reviewers are assigned 8, 10, sometimes 12 papers to assess in 3 weeks, on top of their actual jobs. The quality of review is plummeting. Papers with obvious errors get accepted. Brilliant work gets rejected because a reviewer skimmed it at midnight, and the researchers who care about rigor, they're burning out. Fast. First, the talent concentration accelerates. The gap between frontier labs and everyone else doesn't just widen, it becomes insurmountable. Right now, there are maybe 15-20 institutions in the world that can train state-of-the-art models. In 5 years, it might be 5. In 10 years, it might be 2. When that happens, we lose the diversity of ideas that make science work. We lose the independent researchers who ask uncomfortable questions. We lose the university labs that prioritize understanding over deployment. What we get instead is a monoculture. A handful of companies deciding what problems are worth solving, what risks are worth taking, and what the future of intelligence should look like. Second, we lose the public researchers, the ones who publish openly, the ones who share code, datasets, methods, the ones who believe that transformative technology should be developed in the open, not behind NDA walls. When those researchers leave academia for industry, they don't just change jobs. They change what they're allowed to say. Their work becomes proprietary. Their insights become trade secrets. The frontier of human knowledge moves behind a corporate firewall. Third, we lose the safety researchers. The people studying alignment, robustness, interpretability, fairness. The ones trying to make sure we understand these systems before we deploy them everywhere. Those researchers are already underfunded and outnumbered. When they burn out and leave, there's no bench, no pipeline. Just a gap where the cautious, thoughtful voices used to be. And here's the thing nobody wants to admit. We don't know what we're building anymore. These models are so complex, trained on so much data, optimized by so many interlocking systems, that even the researchers who build them can't fully explain how they work. We're in the middle of the largest uncontrolled experiment in technological history. And the people who understand the risks best are walking away because the system won't let them do their jobs. What happens next isn't predetermined, but the trajectory is clear. If we keep losing researchers to burnout, compute inequality, funding collapse, and ethical exhaustion, we end up with AI development controlled entirely by a handful of profit-maximizing corporations, with no institutional memory, no independent oversight, and no obligation to the public good. The researchers aren't quitting because they stopped believing in AI. They're quitting because they're starting to realize what we're building, and who we're building it for. The question we should be asking isn't why are researchers leaving? The question is, what are we losing when they go? 1. The AI research exodus isn't about individual burnout. It's a structural collapse driven by compute inequality, funding gaps, and ethical pressure that universities and independent labs can't solve alone. 2. When the best researchers leave academia for industry, we don't just lose talent. We lose the open science, independent oversight, and public accountability that makes transformative technology safe. 3. The future of AI is being decided right now by whoever can retain researchers, and if that's only 5 companies, we're not building the future we think we are. If you want more investigations like this, stories that go deeper than the hype and show you what's actually happening behind the press releases, subscribe now. Tomorrow, we're covering the AI feature that regulators are quietly trying to ban. You won't want to miss it.